Live. Oh, there we go. Well, how about that for an introduction? I was secretly going like that, Tom. I don't know if you could see me. I'm like, this is like, woo! Hi, Tom. How you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
No problem. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, wherever you are in the world. My name's Andy Hooper, and today's e-commerce Expander Secrets podcast brought to you live. Tom, did you know it was live, by the way?
I think I did see it. It was live, actually. Yes, I was even more excited.
Yeah, I love it being live. It's much better.
Well, it is, but there's no margin for error, is there? Because we can't edit anything. So everything I say now, I'm going to get held to.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
That's exactly the whole idea. How can we hold people to account the whole way through? So, anyway, Wicked, thank you very much for joining us. For those that are listening for the first time, this is part of our podcast series. Obviously, if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, it's clearly not in a podcast format, but we will be regurgitating this. And if you're listening on the podcast, what you're missing is Tom's beautiful face and my bad hair. Apart from that, you're not missing much else from the visuals, I'm afraid. So actually, it works perfectly as a podcast. And if you are watching, I apologize. You have to look at this. Anyway, there we go. So this is part of our Expander Secrets series. And really what this is about is talking about industry professionals in the space of e-commerce, expanding sellers into Europe, and really focusing on what they're doing currently, what's working for them, what they're seeing happen in the marketplaces, what they're seeing happen in the region, to really give sellers a input into what they can be doing better today, what they need to be looking out for in the future, and going from there. And obviously sharing great information and giving you value from other partners along the journey. So Tom, on that basis, would you like to do a little introduction to a little bit about you, where you work, and so on?
Yeah, of course. So I'm sure a few people may have seen me floating around on LinkedIn and things. I think our marketing team do a good job of that. So yeah, my name's Tom. I manage the partnership side here for AVASK Accounting. And we assist thousands of e-commerce sellers with their tax requirements and filing obligations when they're looking to expand their business globally. So anyone from really from the start of their journey right the way through to selling millions of pounds worth of stock each year, we'll be able to assist with that expansion element. So we have two main parts of the business. We have the accounting side, which is obviously for UK and US companies that need help with their bookkeeping and all that fun stuff. And then we have the other side, which is the indirect tax aspect. So all of the VAT, the sales tax, GST, wherever you are, wherever you're looking to expand, we'll be able to take that administrative burden off you.
Fantastic. Nice. Well, look at that. So a great asset to e-commerce is AVASK. They're really, really helping thousands of sellers to expand into Europe, which is amazing right now. So Tom, let's just dial it back a couple of steps then. So let's talk about how you got into e-commerce. So where did that all begin for you?
Yeah, so I've been in the space for about 3 years now. I came across it because my current boss, obviously Melanie and Angelos, who own AVASK, are I met them at my old job, and 3 years ago they said, "Do you fancy coming to get into the e-commerce space and seeing being part of this journey that we're on as a company?" And my first thoughts was, well, tax. I mean, to be completely honest, I was in sales before. Very strict targets, had to do a certain amount of revenue each month. If not, I was out of a job. And I had not even considered tax. I'd not considered e-commerce, but yeah, the opportunity came up. I took it and haven't looked back since. It's been an incredible journey. As I said, about 3 years on now.
With that, Tom, before you go into that, when you say you were sort of doing stuff, they met you. What was you selling?
I was selling houses.
Nice.
Yeah, it was all housing, so residential sales at a top estate agents in Winchester. The market share is very cutthroat sales, so very different from this environment, which is obviously more of the advisory and sort of planning, I suppose. But yeah, it was in Winchester in an estate agents.
I've done jobs where I'm very mobile. I'm out seeing people and doing things. And obviously estate agents is, all right, yes, I get there's a bit of phone bashing and everything else.
Yeah.
But there's also the opportunity of getting out, going around houses. Look, do you miss any of that? Are you stapled to a desk or?
Well, I think I'm definitely not stapled to a desk. I think I've got enough meetings to keep me going. But in terms of parts that I miss, as you say, able to go out and about quite a lot. I found that because I'm a fairly driven, motivated guy, and that whole sales aspect really fits into my character and my motivational aspect. So I think from my side, I quickly found at that company that the longer I stayed on a chair with a phone in my hand, and the more calls I was able to make, was the more opportunity to help more people to move and ultimately make money for the company and so on. So actually, there wasn't a huge change in terms of going from an office job, which actually looks as if you're going out all the time, because I really wasn't. In fact, I was trying to avoid going out all the time. So slightly different to what maybe you may imagine.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, all right. So you've then got this amazing opportunity, and you started at AVASK. So you started there 3 years ago?
Yep, 3 years ago. Well, just under. So two and 3/4, but who's counting? It seems like 3 years.
Yeah, there you go. That's fine. So you've been there a while. And what's the main role that you started off doing and you've progressed into, I guess?
Yeah, so I was heading up the international business development team. So dealing with any sort of initial consultancy required with any e-commerce seller that's looking to expand, so based all over the world. And we had a very small team at that point that were doing the initial consultancy, which obviously is now a massive part of the business, is the advisory. And really over the past couple of years, it's been a case of growing that sales team, doing a lot of training on e-commerce as a whole, and also sort of looking at the tax implications of expanding your business, which is the best structures for sellers to adopt before dipping their toe in a new market. Obviously a massive part of that has been getting people in different languages, because we're dealing with over 20 languages internally. So there's not many people that we can't talk to on a global scale, which is great. And then very quickly it's developed into more of a partnerships role for myself. So dealing with the likes of global e-commerce experts, which we do have a lot of business with yourselves, just in terms of our clients using you guys. Dealing with those relationships and how we can, look at helping each other to gain more visibility in the market and to help our clients out, which is obviously a massive part on sort of the retention side for AVASK.
Yeah, I mean, just touching back on the 20 languages spoken, like that's vast, isn't it? Like
it's AVASK.
Like certainly is. That's like a lot of people running around talking different languages.
It's definitely a very diverse office. You literally be opposite someone that speaks Italian. Behind you, you've got someone speaking German, French, Spanish. It's the full works, which is great.
Do you speak any other languages?
I speak American, Irish, English, and Scottish. That's about it.
Okay, so you haven't veered too far away from the common language of English, then? Is that fair?
No. Basically, I like to say I speak a bit of French, but as soon as I speak to someone that can speak French, they just laugh at me. So I'm not gonna count that
one. I spent 2 years in Spain, so therefore I think I'm absolutely fluent in Spanish.
So you can order a beer.
But there we go. So that's just how it goes. So you're AVASK, and in that period with AVASK, e-commerce has grown massively over the last 5 years, let alone 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. What sort of changes have you seen at AVASK alone in that period?
I think from a tax point of view, I think we've, as a company, gone through some big milestones of growth, which has been absolutely brilliant to be a part of and to see. I'd say that in terms of what's been instrumental to where we are today is a couple of the programs that we run with Amazon, like the Pan EU promotion, which I'm sure a lot of people that are watching are very familiar with. Of which we took, thousands of e-commerce sellers and registered them in, UK, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Poland, Czech Republic to make most of, obviously, the FBA fulfillment. So I think that was a massive part of the growth that we've seen. I'd say that nowadays sellers are very keen to expand to the UK and EU still. But notice I say UK and EU instead of just the Pan EU, because with Brexit, there's a huge number of complications that have come into place. It's, when I say huge number, I'd say if you don't know anything about how to expand into these markets, there is a lot to learn. But I think sellers that are used to, launching a new market, or have got a good understanding for Amazon and, general tax structures of just how VAT works, it's actually fairly straightforward. But certainly what am I seeing now? I'd say people are being still very keen to expand, but they're definitely having to really be careful on the numbers and to make sure that they're at the right time to be able to do it, because there's no half-hearted expansion to the UK and EU anymore. You've got to be in it for the win. But yeah, opportunity-wise is definitely still worth expanding.
Yeah, I mean, that the AVASK piece, as you say, that massive growth with the different programs that you've piggybacked off of, if that's the right word, has been amazing to see. See your partners that are flourishing like that. It's amazing. It's absolutely great. And so with AVASK then, how much traveling? Well, clearly not doing much traveling at the moment. But obviously, you've been to a lot of events in the past, haven't you? There's lots of events that you've been to. What sort of events have you found have been the most enjoyable?
Yeah, I mean, I love the US events that we go to. I think for me, I love massive shows. Prosper is obviously a great one. And we did the White Label in Vegas, and we did a few others. But for me, I always find that we did one called Empowery with Melissa Simonson in LA. And that was really, really great, because there was like a couple of days and it was a lot of networking. We all went for dinner together, and actually is some of the partnerships that we are really close with now are those people that we met there, along with a great community of sellers as well. So I would say that massive events are great for new business and new opportunity, but in terms of connections and being amongst other people who have a real e-commerce interest, I would say is the smaller events like Empowery, ASGTG, Ed Rosenberg's event in Brooklyn is another really good one, and JCon and things. I'm sure you can probably relate to that, can you, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, there's some great ones there. I mean, that the ASTG one in Brooklyn, that's an amazing little event. That literally about 1,500 sellers all in very, very confined space, very, very quickly, one day in massive amount of business done in those days. And but like the Prosper, I quite like. I like the bigger events as well. The ability at Prosper going around the ASD show and walking around the marketplace. The first day I got there, I went round ASD. I did 48,000 steps in the first day, just walking up and down.
Brilliant.
And I was knackered.
And it's 2 days. Is it 3 days or 2 days?
So we did 1 day walking around there. That was like the setup. Then I went and set up Prosper, and then there was a few days at Prosper, and then whatever at the end. But yeah, 48, or was it 42,000? Anyway, whatever way.
It's a huge amount of steps. But what's funny is a lot of my friends that say, "Oh, okay, great, you're going to Vegas for this event." They thought it was just a legs up, fun trip away with the company, going to gamble, going to do all these fun things. And I just remember finishing day one. I think it was a White Label, and I was just absolutely shattered. You must speak to probably 200, 250 people, not just talking about services, but sort of partnerships, new opportunities to collaborate. But it really is great. And I think the thing is, one of the main things I love about e-commerce, which I was so surprised at when I went to a lot of the events at Amazon in Shoreditch, which is the amount that e-commerce sellers love talking to each other about their experiences, who they use for certain things, how they found certain markets, things to avoid. They love talking to each other, which is just great.
Yeah, I love all that. All that stuff where you get that. I mean, in Vegas and places like that, I mean, I've been to Vegas a few times now, and I've never spent a penny, $1 on gambling. I'm just not my bag. Although I don't know about you, I promised myself that last year that I would go and do the Grand Canyon, so that I'd go to Vegas, have a day spare, and do the Grand Canyon. So I think we were due to go 2 or 3 times last year, probably like you guys, and it just happens. So this year I've still got a day planned on the end of like white label in later on in August, September, isn't it? September, anyway, whenever that is. And I'm like, I've got to go and do the Grand Canyon. Like that just would be epic, wouldn't it? But everyone's like, I want to get a Mustang, convertible Mustang, and just go out, because that would be awesome, wouldn't it?
It would be so good. Well, that's what we did. We went to Melissa Simonson's Apparel event. I think it was like February time. We spent a couple of weeks there, which was just fantastic, working and with the guys in LA. Then went through to Hollywood, and then we were renting a cars with Melanie and Angelos, and we were going down, classic Route 66, something that I've always wanted to do with work. Was just a real dream, I'd say. And I was trying to persuade them to get a Mustang, or to persuade them to get me a Mustang to drive behind them, because there was 3 of us with 3 suitcases. We had to get a practical car. We gutted.
In your Ford Focus or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was a 4x4 Ford, I think. It really was incredible. And I think the sellers that attend, they're there as much for the networking as they are to meet new partners and new service providers. But in that, really is a great experience. I really encourage anyone to try and get to more events as and when they open.
Yeah, definitely. So leading into where we are at the moment, what people are currently seeing, let's split this into a couple of different pieces. But let's start off with, first of all, what are you seeing from not new people coming in, people currently in the market, sellers that are already selling. They're already an established seller in many ways. What are you seeing that are opportunities for sellers right now? Where are you seeing the key things where people are going, this is where I'm going to start diverting. These are the strategies that I'm implementing. Are you seeing anything like that coming up right now?
Yeah, I think, there's a number of ways of sort of looking at it. I'd suppose typically an established seller at the moment is, depending on the planning that they've done, they're either really winning or they're really struggling, in my opinion. Something you actually said a couple of months ago is those sellers that prepared, pre-Brexit and had things in place have seen some, monumental growth over the past sort of 4, 5, 6 months, because they were able to continue selling on both sides of the border. I'd say that a lot of sellers, in terms of strategy and looking at the opportunity in both the UK and EU, I think a lot of people have started leaning towards a 3PL, which I know is a service you guys provide in the Netherlands. And I think that's been absolutely huge to a lot of people's success, because they're able to sell on additional marketplaces. So Amazon, 99.9% of sellers that we speak to are Amazon FBA sellers. It's very rare that they're not. But the ones that are then taking that next step into the likes of OnBuy in the UK, Real DE, whatever other market, and having a 3PL to actually push those sales through those marketplaces, are really taking a front seat in terms of the win in their category, and from a branding perspective, from a sales perspective. So I'd say that's definitely a movement that 6 to 8 months ago, I was seeing less sellers do that, and it was a very straightforward route into the UK. UK is the gateway to Europe. Fine, get into the Pan-EU program or under the European Fulfillment Network to sell into each country, and that worked great. But I think since the start of the year, sellers have had to be much more savvy with the way that they approach Europe and the UK. And I know that something that's been a blocker is the inventory limits as well. The COVID restrictions, just generally speaking. So, it's been a really interesting time. But I'd say those that have been prepared have won or are winning, and those that are looking to invest in the opportunity while it's still there, or while it's growing, is something that I would really recommend a lot of people do.
Yeah, I think actually that coming back to the opportunity right now, I don't think there's ever been a better opportunity in Europe, because what's happened is the number of UK, well, let me back up. People that have always expanded into Europe have actually found this process really easy, because they're expanded into the UK or expanded into Europe. It was the same thing. Like, they just had to divert slightly. People who are based in the UK or people who are based in Europe, they're the ones that have been like, I can't do it. It's just not like, it's too difficult. And I'm like, we got thousands of sellers over there that are doing it no problem at all. And everyone else is like, oh no, it's too difficult. I've got to pull all my stock out of Europe. It's really straightforward. And as you say there, the people that are on it and planned are the ones winning right now, without any shadow of a doubt. But it doesn't mean to say that if you weren't planned and you haven't done it, again, as you just said, Tom, they can't win still. There's still massive opportunities there, isn't there?
Definitely. I think there's a number of things as well that a lot of sellers haven't taken into consideration. I think that because of the whole of Brexit and the disruption and shipping and everything that's, has been a pain in the ass really for a lot of people, if it's fair to say. It's also really important to highlight that COVID, the growth that we've seen is absolutely, monumental. It's been absolutely incredible to see some sellers, tripling or, even more so on their sales. But I would also say that from a tax point of view, a lot of the marketplace in the UK is now responsible for collecting and remitting taxes in the majority of cases, which means that 20% VAT, which is obviously that sales tax element in the UK, is then collected and remitted by the OMP, so your Amazon. Now, what a lot of sellers have seen is actually their other their competitors actually having to boost their products by 20%, because obviously where Amazon are now collecting and remitting, they may not have been compliant. And now because of that, there is a huge opportunity for some sellers to scale whilst their competitors are having to find out a different solution where they haven't been VAT compliant from day one. So that's been really
great point.
A lot of people.
Yeah, that's a great point, isn't it? All of a sudden, their sales have gone up to the cost of their products has gone up 20% because everyone's now having to submit, which they should have been doing in the first place. But it's seen an increase in the cost price of in the retail price of the goods they're selling for. Straight away they've got a 20% increase plus a reduction of sellers plus an increase of buyers. That's a win-win-win, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and I think there's been a lot of confusion around the indirect representation and whether it's required, and it's a real difficult question to answer. I mean, we at AVASK actually have a whole customs team which we actually started the start of this year because sellers were really struggling to have the representation that they needed, and also to be able to actually do the clearances on both sides was also another issue. So we came out of the service, as I said, about 5-6 months ago now, which has been hugely successful. We've managed to allow sellers to trade on both sides of the border for those that were really struggling, and we were able to take on part liability or responsibility for those shipments, being the indirect representative, which has been great. But it is an additional cost to factor in. I think a lot of sellers think it's just come out of nowhere, which in all fairness, it sort of has, in terms of how much stricter each customs office are now taking it, especially in the likes of Germany. But if we talk about blockers, because there's less people doing it, there is also more opportunity. There's less competition. So you've got to take that step to actually expand, to actually maximize on the opportunity, instead of thinking, no, that's too much, or it's an additional step that I hadn't thought about. I'm not sure it's going to work. I think those that are doing it are reaping the rewards massively.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. There's a few things that have come up, isn't there, because of Brexit, whether that be indirect or whatever else it happens to be. There's a few things that have come up that have put those thought processes in people's head, but finding solutions to those is absolutely critical for sellers right now. We've still got people that are struggling to get stuff across the border, whether it be organic products or whatever. Some of those are a lot more difficult. We can solve it, of course we can. But the perception at the moment in the industry is that getting across the border is just too difficult. And there's a whole load of solutions that are becoming later on in the year as well that are going to be even better, where we get free ports and things like that. So that's really, really exciting going forward. So for AVASK then, what's sort of the plan over the next few months? What's happening? What's on the roadmap? Is there events? Is there new services coming out? What's on the roadmap at the moment for AVASK?
Yeah, lots of stuff going on at the moment, as I'm sure you can relate to over at GEE. But always from a servicing point of view, we're always wanting to to provide as many services under sort of the tax umbrella as possible, so that we really do provide a truly one-stop shop solution for our sellers. So looking at sort of launching more services in KSA, Singapore, hopefully Mexico and Canada also on the roadmap. So hopefully over the next 3 to 4 months, we'll be able to offer services for all of our clients in those territories or those countries. So that's really, really exciting. In terms of events, I think we've got about 5 or 6 events that we've locked in already, which are all in New York, ASGTG being one of them, Prosper, White Label, a few others as well, which we're very much looking forward to attending. Be lovely to actually see.
Tom, what do you think the likelihood is us getting there? What do you think?
It's a difficult question, isn't it? It's I'd love to think that we are going to be able to get there. I think we're getting there. I think with things, I think it's really hard to say, because the UK are doing really well in terms of where we are as a country, as a nation, but outside of that is a whole new ball game. But I'm hoping that we can go. I'd love to. It'd pain me massively to think if we couldn't go, but luckily we do have a US office, so we do have people that are going to be attending regardless of whether we can.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your thoughts on it?
Well, I'm a bit half and half. I don't know whether. I mean, we're booked in for, I don't know, half a dozen events, 4 or 5. I can't remember, but certainly a handful in the later end of the year, from sort of August onwards.
Yeah.
And I just don't know. Like, I mean, I want to go. Don't get me wrong. I'm like, I want to go. I'm there. If I can get there, we're going. There's no doubt about that. But it's, you don't know whether we're going to be allowed to go, whether we'll be allowed in, whether they'll accept us in, and whether we'll be able to get back, and whether they'll let us in when we get back.
Yeah.
It's just like a lottery, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's just like, hey, well, let's just go and see what happens. We'll put our name down and go with it. Like,
that's exactly our thoughts as well. And then you've also got like a potential 2-week quarantine at the end of it as well. And you're just like, well, what do we do?
Well, and you can't not do anything. Because I think as soon as it opens up and people do start moving, everyone's going to be like, right, get me to an event. I need to go. Like,
people miss it.
Yeah, they have. People need social interaction, don't they?
Well, so I always say, it's like, with GE, with AVASK, or whatever company you're in, if you're offering some sort of service, you all have 100 people or smaller companies. At least you've got people in the office that you can talk to about what you're doing, what the services are, how your day's been. E-commerce sellers, I forget a lot. They're normally entrepreneurs. They're one-man bands. So when they get a chance to go to an event and open themselves up to thousands of people like them, they just love it. It's great.
It's exactly it. And give them the opportunity to go and listen to industry experts or whatever, especially for things like what we do, expanding sellers into Europe. Actually, in theory, that can come across really complicated. Now, obviously, you and I know that we try and make that as simple and easy as possible for everyone we possibly can. But, an email doesn't always do it justice. You do want to have that conversation. Well, I've been thinking about expanding to Europe, but look, this is what you should do. And you don't always get that from an email, do you? Like, you want to be able to stand on that stage and say, all of you need to go and sell in Europe. Yeah. And here's why. And you can't really do that as well online, a virtual event and everything else. It don't quite work as well.
It doesn't, no. I think, you say like everyone needs to do this. I think it's really interesting to think like how many sellers are stopping launching in the UK and EU just because of taxes or just because of Brexit. And it's just an interesting thought, because as you say, it's really not that difficult to do. And you've done the hard bit, which is launching maybe the US or wherever it may be. So taking it that next step, and the potential of actually selling in Europe is absolutely huge. And it's just a case of, Amazon FBA, fantastic. I've got my warehousing solution, or I use a 3PL, drip feed Amazon, drip feed the other markets. I get that it's an administrative burden on people, but you've done, 60, 70% of the hard work to getting to where you are now. So take that additional step and sell to another 700 or million more people.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And actually, service like yours, ours, and everything else, where essentially you can put all of it under one banner. Like, it just makes sense. You haven't got to deal with hundreds of suppliers. You can just deal with one or two. Like, it depends on your strategy and what you want to do. You haven't got to think about, I've got to speak to people in French, German, Italian. No, you can just speak to us and we'll sort you out and we'll get everything covered for you. Like the 3PL thing, actually, you mentioned earlier, that actually we're seeing a lot of people. No one really, post-Brexit, before COVID, everyone just used to use FBA. But the problem is, with all these problems shipping at the moment, actually getting ships into Europe is really difficult as well. So what we're seeing is people are starting to put buffer stock in places. So you have buffer stock so that when in fact, I had one client say to me the other day, Andy, what we're going to do is we're going to put 500 units of every one of our SKUs in your warehouse and just leave it there. And I'm like, we're going to do that for you. He went, well, because I don't ever want to use it. I was like, okay. It's like, but if I do need to use it, I know I've got an emergency stash with you that I can just switch straight to FBA or turn on seller fulfilled prime straight away. Yeah. Like, either one, doesn't matter, but it's there and done. And I think we've definitely seen a switch from, FBA only to a more of a sort of multiple option.
Agree. Yeah. I think you've got a lot of sellers that are also struggling with cash flow. I think obviously that's always going to be a massive part to play in the e-commerce cycle is, buying today and maybe 4 or 5 months further down the line actually getting paid. So it's really important for sellers to work that one out. And I think that's why, we talk about trends in the industry. We're seeing a lot more sellers investing in, or getting a capital advance from the likes of, Payoneer or other companies that offer it to be able to actually make sure that they have enough stock in place for things like Prime Day and for, the key seasons within the year. I think that's massive part of growth that I've seen from very successful sellers, especially they're looking to scale and sell, which is a whole nother part of e-commerce, which is taking off.
Yeah, I mean that whole buy sell type thing, buying and selling the Amazon businesses. I mean there's massive opportunity for that. We're working with a partner at the moment that can help people sell for 5x. None of this 2 or 3x. Don't get shortchanged. You come to the big guns and get a proper exit. Don't bother with a 2 or 3 times. Come and get a decent exit. That's by the by. So what else? Is there anything else happening? You're like, well, Andy, this is happening. People need to be aware of this. These are sort of changes that are up and coming into the following 6 months, 9 months time.
Yeah, there's quite a few changes going on within the tax world. I think people are tired of change from Brexit, but I think things are sort of stepping in the right direction. So there's something called the one-stop shop, which is an extension of sort of the mini one-stop shop in the UK, which is basically where sellers, in some cases, won't actually need to file for VAT and actually remit VAT to every country. Now, for e-commerce sellers, it is a little bit different, unfortunately, because unless you're selling on your own website or other marketplaces, it may not apply in the same way. So, I think it's fair to say most sellers watching this podcast, correct me if I'm wrong, and is that they're going to be Amazon FBA sellers only, or the majority of which?
Yeah, probably a lot of them will be FBA sellers. 90% of our sort of audience, if you like, is Amazon FBA sellers, Shopify. But let's talk about that piece first.
Fine. So yeah, if you're just selling on Amazon FBA, then OSS doesn't really affect you that much because you're still actually going to have stock held in these countries. You're still going to need to be VAT registered, and you're still going to need to file that VAT return. So that really doesn't change if you're just selling on the marketplace, because Amazon are going to be the deemed supplier. So they're going to be actually collecting and remitting like they are in the UK for you. Now, if you're selling on things like Shopify or your own website, whatever it might be, then OSS will come into place, and you'll then file one return through one country, which will be like the OSS return instead of a domestic return, and then the tax office will then be responsible for actually divvying out the VAT in accordance to where it's due. So there are some changes there. I'd really tempt you, if you're unsure on your situation or how it's going to affect you, to reach out to someone at AVASK, myself, if needs be, and we can then advise you on that. But OSS is only a good thing. It's simplifying the way that European taxes are collected and remitted.
Because actually, the one-stop shop actually could be awesome for sellers.
Yeah.
It's just been poorly executed. In as far as you've still got a file in those countries if you've got stock there and everything else. And I understand why, but actually there could have been an amazing opportunity to streamline that whole process to make that easy for people.
Yeah.
I mean, for Shopify sellers, I totally get that. We're seeing a lot of sort of Shopify sellers that we're working with moving into the Netherlands. One-stop shop Netherlands, fulfill from the Netherlands. Like, it just works. Like, it's just a great opportunity and a place. One, it's a great place to fulfill from, and secondly, there's a whole load of benefits to being there as well. But bringing one-stop shop as well, and boom, that just works. But as you say, for Amazon sellers, doesn't quite work, right?
Yeah, exactly that. I think for Amazon sellers, not much changes. Really nothing changes. So some people on the phone were like, well, great, I don't even need to register for VAT anymore. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. If you're still looking to store stock, which of course, in terms of the model of how Amazon works, how FBA works, if you're going to really want to capitalize and maximize your visibility online, then you're still going to want to have your stock as close to your buyers. So you're still going to need to be VAT registered in those countries. Yeah,
I mean, that's there is a balance there. Is if you're not in all of those countries and you don't want to be in all those countries, don't want to be VAT registered, you don't have to. But what sort of uplift do you see when people go from European Fulfillment Network? Bear in mind the UK is not on that anymore. For anyone listening, we're no longer part of that. But what sort of uplift do you see people who've gone from the European Fulfillment Network onto a pan-EU program? So perhaps explain those two very, very briefly for people, and then what you see as the uplift.
Yeah, of course. So when you expand to Europe, and as Andy just said, like, the UK is now obviously no longer part of that. Before it was. So when you look at the European Fulfillment Network, otherwise known as EFN, you are able to send your products to one EU country. Let's take Germany, for example. You become VAT registered in Germany because you need to be VAT registered as soon as you store physical inventory in an EU country. So you register for German VAT, you send your products into the German FBA centre, and then the European Fulfillment Network is under the FBA umbrella, if you like. You've got EFN. So what that allows you to do is store your products in one country, but sell into others. Okay, so you could be on EFN, storing in Germany and selling to buyers in France on the Amazon.fr storefront. You could be selling to Spanish buyers, Italian buyers, Belgian buyers, all around Europe, and it would just be a cross-border sale. Okay, now the advantage of that is, from a tax compliance point of view, you only need to be VAT registered in one country. Okay, because that's where your stock's held. And then what you're able to do is sell into the other countries under the distance selling thresholds, which will, of course, change due to OSS. But in terms of what those sales thresholds are, you've got the likes of France, Italy, and Spain all have an individual threshold of 35,000 euros. So if I'm a US seller, or wherever I'm based, looking to sell in Europe, I might send my stock to the UK, cater for the UK market, send my stock to Germany to cater for EU, and then facilitate those other sales cross-border from the German warehouse. Now, that's the benefits. The disadvantage is, one, your stock's not as close as it could be to the likes of your Spanish buyers, your French buyers, Italian, and so on. So you've got a further distance to travel. I'd say that then rolls into sort of the additional fees that Amazon will charge for FBA, because there'll be an additional cross-border transaction fee added to those sales. So will eat into your margins slightly. And of course, you won't be Prime eligible in all of these countries. So although it's a great stepping stone, I would say any seller that's really serious about Europe and they really want to maximize the opportunity, anyone's going to be sort of going for the Pan-EU program. And the Pan-EU program is where you send your stock again to one country. Amazon say, thank you very much. Let's work out where it's probably going to sell the best. So they'll use an algorithm to sort of determine where the stock will sell best. And they'll send the inventory out across their fulfillment centers in those countries, in the likes of Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Poland, Czech Republic. And obviously then that will facilitate the Prime eligibility in these countries. But unfortunately then you need to register for VAT in each country, which, when you look at a tax point of view, you then need to file the tax. And that's where we come in as a provider, because we'll calculate that tax for you and let you know what to pay and when. and that's really as straightforward as it is. Back to your question, Andy, on uplift. It really differs from seller to seller. Amazon did a big survey right when the Panny U promotion was out, and they were saying that it's around a 30 to 40% increase. I would say that's maybe a little heavy in some cases. In some cases, it can be light, but I think the saving on the cross-border transaction fees is also a massive part to play in the Panny U. And if you're trying to grow a brand, and you're trying to pick up sales velocity in markets that are weaker than Germany and France, then it's the perfect way to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually. When you're looking at different marketplaces, Spain and Italy and things like that as well, there's a massive opportunity there, isn't there? We're trying to get into those different places. So, yeah, fantastic. Okay, so give us a little bit about, as sort of a closing piece now, sort of what AVASK does, how it can support sellers, and what it can really do to help people to accelerate their growth.
Yeah, of course. So, of course, we're an accounting and tax firm, which you may not think of immediately. They're like, oh, these are the perfect guys to help me expand. Similar to GE in some respects. If you're thinking of expanding your business, whether it's in the UK and EU, the USA, Australia, the UAE, and so many other countries and territories that we cover, feel free to get in contact. We provide free consultation for expansion advice on things to do with taxes, what the requirements are, things that you need to consider, and we'll also be able to consult you on what that looks like from a costing point of view, margins, all those sorts of things is part of it. And then we have a great partner network, which of course GE is a big part of for the UK and EU. We can connect you with the right partners because, as Andy said at the start, there is a checklist that you need to complete before you expand, as there is with anything in business. You need to plan that expansion really well, and important to do that from the outset. But we'll be able to hopefully provide more of a one-stop shop solution from a tax and accounting point of view to let you expand from A to B. In terms of the services that we offer, I've mentioned some of the countries we cover, but we're also able to just give general business advisory. We're able to look at incorporation, accounting and bookkeeping, patents and trademarks, all those important aspects before you delve into a new market. And then the service that we provide is a very comprehensive handheld approach. So we'll be able to deal with obviously all areas of business from smaller accounts right the way up to sort of your multi-million dollar or pound accounts, and assist with the expansion. So handheld approach, dealing with all of the tax piece so that you guys can focus on what's more important, which is the business growth as opposed to sort of the tax burden. So hopefully that sums it up in a nutshell. But free consultation. So feel free to reach out to us. Fantastic.
Yeah. And if people do want to reach out, Tom, what's the best way of doing that?
Probably best to reach out to expansion@avaskgroup.com. So expansion@avaskgroup.com or tom.meek@avaskgroup.com.
There we go. Look at that. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been amazing having you on. So thank you very much for coming. It's been great having AVASK as a partner. So thank you very much for everything you guys do to support us. It's great to have partners like you and great people to work with and connect with. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Andy. Likewise, it's been great to come on. And I'm sure we'll have many more in the future.
Indeed. Let's do that. We're planning one a quarter for all of our partners. So we'll come up with these sort of different things. We might have some different topics next time as well. We might create some topics and we'll see where they end up. Who knows? But there we go. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. You have been listening to the e-commerce Expander Secrets podcast. My name is Andy Hooper, but more importantly, Tom Meek from AVASK was our guest. Thank you very much for Tom. Thank you very much to AVASK, and we'll see you on the next episode very shortly. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Tom. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.